Carl Gallup's going to join us here. Carl's been on with us a number of times over the years. Pastor, radio host, best-selling author. He's got a book that's been out for a little while, doing well on Amazon.com, called The Final Warning. And Carl does a show down in the Gulf Coast area of Florida. And good to have you on the show this morning, Carl. How are you, sir?
Hey, Doug, it's always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
It's always good to get your kind of take on maybe some of the events that we, that we're watching out there. Since the last time we talked, we've had a lot of discussion about the president and his views about Israel, what's happening with this negotiation with Iran and such. Have you ever seen a president really this anti sort of Israel since Israel became a nation, 48?
Well, no, not only have I not seen that in my lifetime, but I think the alarming way in which he is responding to Israel and a lot of key players in his administration, it's really unnerving. It's the heart of America. I mean, even liberals are speaking about it, and of course, many who are conservative, and particularly those who come from a biblical worldview. But this is the worst I've seen it. It's quite alarming, and it seems to be very prophetic as well, Doug.
Well, think about Franklin Graham, Samaritan Spurs here in North Carolina, the son of Billy Graham. Even he's getting frustrated, it seems like, because he's, he's being pretty open about his criticism of the way the president's handling the situation, and really, Christians are being slaughtered left and right, and the president doesn't say anything about it.
Yeah, well, no, you're right. Franklin Graham, who is a huge figure, known worldwide. Michelle Bachmann, a former congresswoman. She has been really outspoken on this lately, as have people from around, leaders around the world. In fact, some are. We're hearing over and over now from prominent figures around the world that we could be on the verge of or the edge of World War III. Some are claiming that we're already involved in a World War III, and they're pointing towards Obama's policies as a key factor in it.
Yeah, at the same time, just this week, he said that the world is safer now than it was 40 years ago, which is just astounding, really. I mean, with the rise of this Islamic jihads, Iran may have a nuclear weapon. There's going to be an arms race in the Middle East here, because if Iran gets one, Saudi Arabia is going to get one.
Right. Well, that was an astounding statement. I don't know what the precise statistics are. I doubt if he does either, because he said in that speech, his exact words were, the world is probably safer than it was 30 or 40 years ago. He just kind of pulled that one out of his back pocket. But I noticed that there was a complete lack of mentioning of the absolute slaughter and extermination of entire Christian communities and tens of thousands of Christians who have already been killed and hundreds of thousands displaced and all over the Middle East right now. So it was an astounding statement, to be sure, Doug.
Yeah, and you look at President Obama as leader. I think you and I may have chatted about this before. I see him as a historic figure because not about being the first African American elected president. I see him as it would take somebody to make the kind of decisions he's making, really, to change really the whole sort of situation with America and the rest of the world. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, after all, we've never had a president really kind of thinks like he does.
No, we haven't. And listen, yes, I would agree with you, Doug. And people like myself and more than likely you back in the day, way back in 2007 and 2008, way back then, we were warning people that, look, if you put this guy in office, he will, quote, fundamentally change America, but not the way in which you're expecting. And it has nothing to do with his race. It had everything to do, when I was giving those warnings way back then, it had everything to do with the fact that I could read. I read his book. I listened to his heart. I listened to what he said about America, his hatred for all things Americana. I watched his voting record in the Senate. He was had a more liberal voting record than Teddy Kennedy, who was still alive and in the Senate at that time. I mean, it was easy to read the tea leaves. I wasn't claiming to be a prophet back then. I just said, look at who the guy is. Look what his philosophy is. Well, now here we are, 7 years later, and we're living the fruition of those things.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Even a lot of liberals are now scratching their heads, a lot of talking heads saying, what's he thinking?
Well, the Yeah, the other thing, Carl, it strikes me is that we're making decisions that are so obviously wrong-headed. And, of course, his arrogance is that he's the only one that understands, I guess, what to do. But, I mean, from a standpoint of just standing back and seeing, especially foreign policy, it's just so wrong-headed and confusing. It's like we're making decisions that are not in our own best interests.
Well, look who his main advisor is, the person who there have been a lot of little personality pieces run, even by the liberal media over the years, just extolling the fact that his main advisor, the one who has, quote, has his ear the most, is Valerie Jarrett, born in Iran, Muslim family. So an Iranian-born Muslim has his ear more than anyone else. I mean that's amazing.
And he's also
consider the amount of Muslim Brotherhood in the White House and in the administration. I mean, it just goes on from there.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I think from a historical perspective, we're going to look back and say, well, the only kind of president would have ever been so anti-Israel, so pro-Iran, would be someone with Obama's background. There's no. And how he got elected and all this is just astounding to me in itself. But I go back to, you look at some of the decisions that we've made and how we would never 20, 30 years ago thought of any president making some of these alliances. I mean, he's kinder to our enemies than he is to our friends.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. Someone said the other day he's placed more sanctions on Christians in the United States than he has on Iran.
Yeah, we get lectured every time it's a Christian holiday, but then Ramadan, he has a big announcement about how Islam played a big role in founding of the country, which is absurd. And I pointed out that if there was any founding really that Muslims played, it was selling slaves. That was their role, Carl, back then.
Yes, and not only that, but one of the very first wars we fought was the Barbary Pirate Wars. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and of course that was about Muslims and their piracy acts against the nations of the world, including the United States. In the founding of our nation in the early days, and that's why Thomas Jefferson, had a Quran. I've heard Obama mention Jefferson's Quran as though Jefferson was some kind of a Muslim, but
yeah, because he was fighting them.
History records clearly show he had the Quran so he could study Islam to know how to defeat the quote enemy.
Oh man, we'll be right here this morning. Carl Gallups is with us. CarlGallups.com. He's a best-selling author. He's a pastor, radio host as well. The book, The Rabbi Who Found Messiah, was just a fascinating book. He's got a new one out called Final Warning, Understanding the Trumpet Days of Revelation. May want to check that out as well. And, Carl, I know this is, you really come from a biblical perspective, kind of looking at world events, and it's always interesting to kind of look into that sort of aspect of it. I saw something the other day. I meant to send you an email. I saw where there's a new program apparently the military has about drones. And they send a missile up or something, and it puts thousands of these little drones into the air, and they call them locusts. I thought you'd find that kind of interesting, actually.
Yeah, Doug, thank you for that. As a matter of fact, I keyed in on that as soon as I saw the headline. Yeah, it's LOCUSTS, and it's an abbreviation, an acronym. I can't remember all the.
So I'm wondering, are they trying to play tricks on us, or is that really significant? I don't know, but I thought that was interesting anyway.
It may be a little bit of both, but they've developed this weapon that shoots a missile into the air that then bursts and releases, hundreds, I guess, I don't know, as many as they want, of these little miniature drones with weapon systems and camera systems on them, and they call this new technology the locust technology. Now, because it looks like a bunch of locusts in the air, but they're really little mechanized, they're for the sake of redundancy, excuse me, they're machines. And so, of course, you and I are giggling because we understand that in the book of Revelation particularly, I just wrote a book, Final Warning, talking about the symbolism in the book of Revelation, how it matches certain specific historical events that are unfolding before our eyes even now. And there are prophecies in there about in the last days these John saw something. He said, "I saw something. It looked like locusts, and their tails, struck and stung and shot fire and killed people, and their wings sounded like thundering chariots." And of course, a lot of people down through the years Well, you got to remember, John,
right? Thought it was like one of these attack helicopters, which, right?
Yeah.
Kind of looking at, but I thought it was interesting when you see now that the drones are such small sizes, and they even refer to them as locusts. I knew you would jump on that.
Yeah. Well, I did, and the symbolism is pretty obvious. And so people are seeing, looking at that and saying, "Wow!" I mean, this is pretty front and center.
Yeah, something though that I think is that people who actually who read the Bible or whatever and look at maybe prophecy, which is kind of your area. They see Iran, Persia, right? They see many of these countries. Yemen now is in the news all of a sudden. That's listed. You got Libya, of course, is listed. I mean, you cannot get whether you believe in this or not. You can't get away from the fact that a number of the countries listed in some of these war scenarios we're having problems with them today.
Yes, and let me tell you how intricate and unbelievable this is, and I write a lot about it in my book. And speak about it all the time. Yeah, what you're referring to, primarily the prophecies of Ezekiel 38. Now, it's amazing. Ezekiel 37 prophesies that in the last days, Israel will return to the land, and there will be a restored nation of Israel in the land, powerful and strong. And that happened in 1948. In 1967, of course, they recaptured Jerusalem, which was another prophecy. Then in Ezekiel 38, it says, once this returned Israel is in the land, there will be a coalition of nations that begin to form. And what's astounding, Doug, as you know, those nations are listed by their tribal names, most of them. Now, there's some of them still have the ancient names, like Egypt and Libya. But there's the name of Persia. Well, the modern-day Persians are Iranians. Iranians are not Arabs. 65% of the Iranian population are Persians and speak the Persian language. So it says that they will form an alliance, and this is interesting, Doug, with Magog. Now, Magog come from the ancient Scythians, according to Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian from the very first century A.D. He says that they're from the ancient Scythians, which by then had settled into what we would now know as Russia. But, of course, when Ezekiel wrote the prophecy, the Scythians were then living in what we now know as Turkey. And, of course, they mostly migrated into Russia. So Magog, a Turkey, Russia kind of people, and those folks living in those areas are going to form alliances with Iran. And Ezekiel 38 says, for the purpose of destroying a returned Israel. Well, Doug, we're the only generation in the history of the world to see Iran, Turkey, and Russia all forming compacts and alliances, and for the expressed purpose coming right out of Iran to push Israel into the sea and to annihilate Israel forever, which comes right out of a 2,600-year-old prophecy found only in the Word of God.
And people watching just current events can't help but think the lid is going to blow off at some point here, right? It's you see ISIS, whether they're a long-standing threat or maybe a short-term threat, who knows? But I mean, you got what the chaos that's going on in the Middle East. I mean, with Iran, if they really do obtain a nuclear weapon and the ability to deliver it, I mean, that changes everything. We're living in a new era then.
Yes.
They used to say years ago that nightmare scenario would be some rogue nation with nuclear weapons, right? Well, we could very well be living in that era.
Yes. Oh, we could be. And again, millions around the world, theologians and Bible students and students of prophecy believe they see direct references to this in the Scriptures, or at least symbolic allusions to some type of a nuclear holocaust that will either take place in and around the Middle East and perhaps spread to the world, or will bring us up to the brink of it. And then some people even theorize that may be the time when a world figure steps forward to kind of declare peace and to bring peace to the scenario, which, of course, a lot of Bible students would say that could very well be the Antichrist at that point. So, yeah, I mean, things are building and building. I mean, Michelle Bachmann has been all over the news lately just saying these things that you and I are talking about. Again, Franklin Graham, the Pope, all manner of radio talk hosts and politicians from around the world, the Ukrainian former ambassador, Mikhail Gorbachev, just recently said something very similar about a possible World War III scenario bubbling up right before our eyes. And again, I write about this in my book because there are allusions even in the book of Revelation. Trumpet 6 prophecy, for example. Now, listen to this, Doug. It speaks of a major World War scenario. It talks of even 200 million people fighting, and it says specifically, it says along the Euphrates River. Well, that's astounding, Doug, because the Euphrates River, as you know, starts in northern Turkey, runs through Syria, through Iraq, and empties into the Persian Gulf. Well, that is the heartland of where ISIS is doing its deeds right now. Turkey is propping up and supplying aid to ISIS. Iran and Russia and Turkey are all in alliances and compact. Syria and Iraq, that's where all of that's going on. And, I mean, that's what the Trumpet 6 prophecy says of Revelation, that is going to happen. And we're watching something like that building right now, and millions of people around the world see it. This is not something just pulled out of my back pocket or someone else's. I mean, you know, this stuff was written 2,000 years ago, and we're the only generation in the history of the planet to see everything aligning in this
Well,
way.
as usual, I wish we had more time, Carl. I'm up against the clock. We'll just have to have you back on sometime soon. But thank you again. Good luck with your latest book, Final Warning.
Oh, thank you, Doug. God bless you. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. It's always a joy to be with you.
Same here. CarlGallups.com, pastor, author, best-selling author at Amazon.com.